Do you remember Trump derangement syndrome? It probably still exists. I'm sure it does in some people, but it was huge in 2015, 2016, characterized by that image or that video of that woman screaming to the heavens when Donald Trump was elected.
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President Obama is the ex-president. And Mr. Trump, for the moment, steps to listen for the inaugural address.
What a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever any weird states of America, Donald.
Tap on the shoulder. You adjust the microphone as you're told, man.
Essentially, you would bring up the name of Donald Trump. You would bring up something that he had done just to sort of discuss it, whether it was good or bad. And people would go into some sort of fit of leftist Tourette's, racist, bigot, Islamophobe, homophobe, whatever.
Adjust the microphone as you're told, man.
I remember talking with a colleague when I was working at the Catholic school in the staff room, in the workroom, and they were talking about the Muslim ban. You remember this? And I said, it's not really a Muslim ban because I think 85% of the countries on earth at that time that were majority Muslim were actually able to come into the go into the United States as they always had. And really it was just a ban on travel from certain countries that had experienced or were experiencing civil conflicts that made them hotbeds for terrorist activity. And this had actually happened in a similar way under Barack Obama. And I was called a bigot and an Islamophobe in front of colleagues by someone who I thought was a friend. Anyway, he later apologized because I said, you can't just go doing that. But it was evidence of some sort of mind virus, some sort of mimetic contagion that had infected the minds of people about Donald Trump. They were unable to be rational.
Until about 20 minutes ago, for example, the Democrats saw themselves as the party of reason, resistant to superstition and mass hysteria. They were, as they often told you, the party that fought McCarthyism. Now it's the party that engages in McCarthyism enthusiastically. Watch.
This is nothing short of treasonous because it is a betrayal of the nation. He is giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
I think Donald Trump is a fascist. I think everything he stands for is disgusting.
That is pure racism. And the president is cynically using that racism to appeal to his base.
That is not what you see in a democracy. That is exactly what you see in authoritarian regimes.
They dare me to say impeach him. Today I say impeach 45.
Speaking of hysteria, Maxine Waters, of course, did not stop there. She urged her followers to hunt down and harass anybody tied to the Trump administration.
Talking to Catholics who were pro-life and explaining to them that Donald Trump was likely a advocate, or at least someone who would help the pro-life cause, which clearly he did by appointing the judges who did overturn Roe versus Wade. Even there, the derangement syndrome, the mind virus of hatred for Trump was so deep that they couldn't, if Donald Trump said 2 + 2 is 4, they would have said, no, it must be 5, because Trump said it. Now, there are reasons to be critical of some of the things Trump said. I'm not here to defend everything that the Donald has ever done, but I just bring it up as an example because I see something similar with Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre and the Society of St. Pius X. You see, a very similar thing to this Trump derangement syndrome exists within the Catholic Church about the Society of St. Pius X and Marcel Lefebvre. It's amazing. You bring up the name Marcel Lefebvre or the Society of St. Pius X with otherwise well-meaning conservative Catholics, and they go into a fit of Marcel Lefebvre derangement syndrome, SSPX derangement syndrome, schism, full communion, partial communion, irregular communion.
Adjust the microphone as you're told, man.
They never have any reasons for it, and when you try to actually engage them in conversation, they act just like leftists who are screaming about Donald Trump. It really is strange. Recently, the news has come out that Bishop Wander has come out, or there's a series of videos that he's the speaker in that are coming out where he's talking about his journey to the SSPX. And he said very plainly that Pope Francis told him that the SSPX are not schismatics. Now, Bishop Wander is not just any bishop. He was appointed by Cardinal Muller to be the sort of go-between between the Ecclesia Dei communities in Rome in a very important capacity. And then in 2019, with Pope Francis's blessing, he actually moved into a residence with the SSPX, has been celebrating Mass there. He even had his Jubilee Mass with the Swiss Guard, the Pope's Swiss Guard, present. They must be the canonically irregular Swiss Guard in order to associate with the SSPX. And I spoke to a priest who knows Bishop Wander and has spent time with him, and they said he's a very prayerful man and has been basically in consistent prayer and study for the last 3 years, studying the life of Archbishop Lefebvre and the SSPX's principles. And like many other people, Bishop Wander has come to the conclusion that the SSPX is not in schism. Not only that, he has called what happened to Lefebvre a grave injustice, meaning it was wrong, even if by the letter of the law it was executed by the hierarchy. Here's the thing. This should be a cause for great joy for all Catholics, and here's why. You see, as Catholics, we believe there is no salvation outside the Church. Of course, we can debate, sort of how Christians who are not Catholic could be saved, and that's, is there an internal, invisible association with the Church? Are they really ignorant of what they're rejecting if they're Protestant or the Orthodox? That's a conversation for another day. But the normal means of salvation is that there's no salvation outside the Catholic Church, and you need to live in a state of grace and die in a state of grace, even if you live at times in mortal sin. Die in friendship with God, which is done ordinarily through the sacraments. This means that Catholics need priests. This means that priests need bishops in order to ordain more priests, because without these things there are no sacraments, which means there is no salvation. If you were given news that seemed to confirm that upwards of 700 to 800 priests were not in schism, and that bishops who ordain these priests were not in schism, if you really were Catholic, if you really did love the Church, wouldn't this bring you great joy? I've got nothing but love for my ortho bros. I work closely with an Orthodox friend. Don't take this out of context, but I say things like, I'm very soft on the Orthodox, meaning, to be honest, I haven't really looked into the schism between East and West very much, and I don't hold any animus in my heart towards the Orthodox. It's just not something that's on my radar. Nonetheless, there is a schism, and this was admitted by the Orthodox. If tomorrow the Russian Orthodox Church were to somehow come into communion with the Catholic Church, with Rome, it would be one of the greatest days of my life. I think I would weep. I would weep if the Orthodox Church were to come into communion with Rome. Because rather than worrying about the souls of Christians in a canonical situation that is troubling, I could have great consolation that millions of Catholics had just joined the Catholic Church, which would mean that millions of souls would have a greater chance to be saved. Wouldn't that just be the greatest news you've ever heard? Why would anyone, for a moment, waste any time talking about things that the Orthodox had said in the past, things that the Russian Patriarch had said in the past? Why would you ever waste your time? What hardness of heart would you have to not be rejoicing at something like that? Now, I don't believe the SSPX were ever in schism. I don't believe the SSPX are schismatics, and I don't believe that Lefebvre ever left the Church. But it is the perception of many that he did, and that the SSPX are not in the Catholic Church. If that's what you believe, and you have anything other than joy when a bishop of the Catholic Church comes out and affirms that the Pope believes they're not schismatics, then there's something wrong with you. There's something deeply wrong with you. You are not filled with divine charity. And for you, salvation, I don't even know if you believe in no salvation outside the Church, but if you do, what great hardness of heart fills you that you would express anything other than happiness that there are more Catholic priests? Because that's what this would mean. If you believe the SSPX are schismatic, or were schismatic, then if you're logically consistent and not simply a charlatan and a fraud, and actually believe the doctrines of the Church, you would believe that that means the priests of the SSPX are not in the Church, which would mean that they're not Catholic. That's what that would mean. And you would believe that at least in some way, the faithful who attend the chapels and receive sacraments from the SSPX in some way were at least in the danger of separating themselves from the Church, which would mean that they would be in grave danger of losing their souls. This would be very sad. So if it could be explained to you by someone who would know better than you, since he actually is a bishop who was assigned by Rome to understand the SSPX, and if this man with this expertise that you don't possess were to say that the Pope himself does not believe the Society are schismatics, then this should be something that would bring you great joy. For many of you, it doesn't. It's very sad that certain people are not overjoyed by this and instead believe that they should find reasons why there are less Catholics. If you're someone who thinks like that, I hope that you are able to find the joy of the gospel and the joy of Jesus Christ and rejoice when the lost sheep come back to the fold. Again, I don't believe the SSPX were ever lost, but if you did believe they were, then you should be rejoicing at the one sheep coming back to join the 99. Otherwise, you're no different than a Pharisee.